Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts and other stuff they're involved in. My guest today is not only a martial artist, but an author, an entrepreneur, a father, a husband, an adventurer, and a mentor who grew up in a small town in Oregon. As a kid, he loved outdoor activities like fishing, BMX, motorcycles, and baseball. After high school, he joined the Marine Corps and became the first in his extended family to attend college. Martial arts became a very important part of his life. 3 decades ago, he founded Northwest Fighting Arts and has taught over 25,000 students. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Jeff Patterson. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here.
Hey, I appreciate the time. I'm glad you reached out. I loved reading about you and can't wait to let the listeners learn about you and your journey and everything else we can come up with. So
nice. Yes, I look forward to it as well.
What we like to do with all my guests, what we do is I go back to the very beginning. I want to know what led to that first interest. Where did that first spark come from that kind of kicked off your martial arts journey?
You know, as a kid, I was always interested in the idea of martial arts. However, I grew up with very modest means and my family didn't have the ability to put me into a martial arts program. So when I was in my mid-teens, I got a job working and started to save up money for a car. And shortly after I got a car, I went and signed up at a local martial arts studio. And from there, it just kind of snowballed and ended up on this lifelong journey of 36 years of studying the martial arts.
So before you actually joined, I mean, do you remember maybe it was like some martial arts movies? Was it, comic books? Do you know what really started that initial interest, or do you just always remember being interested in it?
I always like action movies. I used to watch Bruce Lee, I used to be interested in, many things on the combative side of the movies and that kind of thing. And in my little town, there wasn't many opportunities. There was only 2 martial arts studios in the whole valley.
Wow.
And it just was enough to get me started. And then when I moved up here to Portland, Oregon, I had a lot more opportunity. And that's where I really started to branch out and get a little deeper into the arts.
Okay. So that very first school then, first of all, what style was that? And just what are some things you remember about maybe those first few classes that kind of drew you in and made you want to keep going?
It was a Kempo karate school that also did kickboxing. Oh. And I used to love the sparring classes. And when we were doing the kickboxing, the Kempo, I kind of had fun with it, but it never really resonated with me as much. I went through and I got my black belt in Kempo at that school, but I was just always drawn to the kickboxing. It was something that, I like the randomness. I like the fast pace strategy of being in the ring and doing that. And so when I went up here to Portland, I started getting into Western boxing as well. And I used to go to a boxing gym that is just a few blocks here from my academy. And at a boxing gym, they run that a lot different than they do a regular martial arts school or any other kind of classroom environment, in that usually there's 4 or 5 coaches at the gym that all have maybe 5 or 6 different athletes that they're working with. Well, there was one coach there who was very well known, and he'd actually created national and world champion level fighters. And I really wanted to get to spend some time with him. I had a lot of respect for him. I used to show up at the gym every day when I knew he was going to be there and kind of follow him around a little bit. And after about 3 or 4 months of this and him seeing my work ethic, he started showing me some things and spending a little bit of time with me. And he really opened up my eyes to many of the other martial arts that I'm involved with now, as well as the meditative arts, which has been a big influence and turning point in my life in many ways.
Okay. Now, did you get involved in the competition side of martial arts when at that Kempo school and the kickboxing school?
I did a couple small competitions when I first got started, but nothing professionally.
Okay. And then you mentioned, other styles. Now, did you do the military before you moved to Portland, I'm assuming?
Yes. So I left Southern Oregon to join the Marine Corps, and I did that and then came back to Southern Oregon to start college and realized that that wasn't the best path for me. And so I moved up to Portland and went to school. I, at that point, was part-time teaching martial arts out of an academy up here, and I was using that to help pay for my education. And then when I graduated college, decided to just follow my path of the martial arts lifestyle, and I mentioned I came from modest means. I was the first person in my family to ever go through college, and this is my extended family, and I have a pretty large family as well.
Okay.
And everybody was expecting me to go out and get a big job doing something important. And, the first couple of years, starting to be a struggling martial artist, I've heard many things from the family, when are you going to get a real job? When are you going to do something with your degree? And I just always had that passion and that desire to follow the arts, and that one coach that I mentioned earlier at the boxing gym, he always used to tell me that, you want to create a life, not make a living. And that always really stuck with me, in that I wanted to build my life around martial arts because it's what I was very passionate about.
And I saw that quote in your bio, and I love that. That's something I wish more people would be encouraged to do. I mean, there's so many people that they hate their jobs. They they dread going into there any day, and it's just doing something you love and making money with it, and providing for yourself and your family by doing stuff that you actually enjoy and appreciate. I mean, that should be the American dream.
Exactly. And I remember I graduated college with 2 degrees in finance and management. And I remember telling myself back there, and remember this is 1994, so this has been a bit, but I remember telling myself, man, if you could just make $30,000 a year teaching martial arts, doing what you love, that would be the dream, right? And never did I imagine that I would own my own building and have 15 employees and start up an online business and all of these things that have happened through the martial arts. I didn't even see that in the vision or know that that was possible.
Now, you mentioned in college you were teaching to help put yourself through college. What led to the teachings? Was that, I'm assuming that started at the Kempo school that got you interested in the teaching side of martial arts?
Yes. So when I came up to Portland, I looked up another Kempo school because that's what I knew. And I found a place called Stewart Self-Defense Academy. And I trained there for 2 or 3 years before that business went out of business. And at that point, the other kind of senior student that was teaching alongside of me at that academy, him and I started up the academy that I now run, Northwest Fighting Arts and Portland Tai Chi Academy. And so I had a partner for the first 4 or 5 years of the program. And then he went on to pursue a fight career, which lasted for a few years. And now he's teaching over on the East Coast.
Okay, very cool. Now you mentioned Kempo, kickboxing, and actual boxing. What was the next style you started kind of learning and blending into your own system?
So not too far after that, I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Eskrima, Tai Chi and Qigong. That same boxing coach, after I'd only been working with him for about 2 or 3 weeks, he said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Nice. And here I am, this young kid that doesn't know much about anything, thinking, isn't Tai Chi for like old people in the park? How's that going to help me be a better fighter? And I started doing the meditative practice, and it changed my life in so many ways. And, through the years, I've had thousands of students come through the academy, and I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively changed people's lives. And that's why I've been so passionate about, writing my last couple books on the meditative arts and building the online program, teaching people how to integrate the meditative arts into their life. And it's just been a big motivating force for me.
So now in your own academy, do you work the meditation into all your classes, or is that a separate part of the school?
So we have 4 separate programs here at the academy. We have our striking program where we combine Muay Thai and Western boxing. We have our Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program. We have our JKD and Eskrima program. And then lastly, we have our meditative program, which is a combination of Tai Chi, Qigong, Yichuan, sitting meditation, and those more meditative arts.
Okay. And at any given time, roughly how many students are in a class?
We have a fairly large school, so there is 8,000 square feet. It's on 2 floors. So we have an upstairs classroom and a downstairs mat room and weight room. And there's times, depending on when you come in, where there might be 35 people in the upstairs classroom and 35 people in the downstairs classroom. And it's just a sweatbox, it's really humming in here.
Nice.
Other times when you come into a Tai Chi class, we usually only have 1 classroom operational at a time then, and you might see anywhere from 20 to 35 students in a Tai Chi class.
And is that school the original location where it started, or has it grown over the years and moved buildings? And
yeah, we've moved multiple times. I think this is our 4th physical location. And if you count the basement of my house where we really started, that would be 5.
So your first commercial location, how many square footage was that compared to your 8,000 square foot place you have now?
Well, it was in the back of a book distributor, and he had more space than he needed. And he was a student of a teacher of mine. And he was letting us rent it out very, very inexpensively to help us get started. Mm-hmm. And there was about maybe, 1,500 to 2,000 square feet of room in there for that location. Shortly after that, we moved over to Southeast Portland into another place that was about the same size. Okay. And then I went off on my own. Sean left. And I started up my next location, which was at about 5,000 square feet. And I was there for a good, 6 to 10 years. And then I've been here at this location now since 2007.
Wow, very cool. And you say that you've taught over 25,000 students. So think back to that very first time maybe teaching in your basement to now. You have this huge school and 4 different programs going. What do you think over the years has changed the most about your teaching style?
Oh, so much. One of the things that I love about the arts, both martial arts and the meditative arts, is that no matter how much time and energy you put into it, you can always get better. And, even after all the thousands of hours I've invested in my own practice, my teaching, and my education, you're always a student first. And, my wife is an orthopedic surgeon, and I always joke with her in that, I've invested more in my martial arts education than she did in her medical education. And it really is a life journey. And so, my teaching style has evolved through the years on just me being a better communicator and understanding the arts with more depth and just being able to energetically connect with people on different levels. It's really a night and day different position that I'm in.
So if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice when you're just about to open that first school, what would you tell yourself?
Ooh, always continue to keep learning, never get to the point where you feel comfortable. And, there's been periods of time where maybe the spark of wanting to learn has faded a little bit, and then it was reignited. Mm-hmm. And I would just say, always keep that spark and that fire burning strong, because that's what's going to make you different than everybody else. Through the years, I've met hundreds of gym owners and martial arts academy owners, and oftentimes you'll see people that get to a certain level, they get comfortable, they start up a school, and they quit growing, mm-hmm. And when you do that, you're never as good of a teacher as you can be. You're never offering the best value to your students. And, I just think you lose a lot of the passion when you decide to quit educating yourself in the practice.
I know it's interesting talking to different guests who teach in different parts of the country. And I've heard from a handful of guests that run schools that they see, like on the traditional side, they see it wavering. They see less students coming and less students coming, where like the area I'm in, and it sounds like the area you're in, it's continuing to grow and getting bigger and bigger. Any thoughts on why that is?
I think that a lot of the traditional style, like the old Kempo schools and the Taekwondo schools that were around when I was a kid, are having a harder time now than, since the UFC has come out. The Muay Thai and the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu seem to be very strong. Of our 4 programs here, the one that's probably the most traditional and old school would be the JKD and Eskrima. And by far, that is the smallest program here at the Academy.
Okay.
We've got about maybe 500 active students here at the Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say in our Eskrima program, we might only have 30 students.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, you mentioned Eskrima. So what's your favorite weapon to train with?
I love the dagger. And then also short second would be the single stick.
Okay.
Short stick.
Cool. Now, you mentioned you didn't do much competition when you were younger. Did you ever get into it as you got older? Ever do tournaments or boxing or kickboxing or martial arts tournaments?
No, my old boxing coach was pushing me in that direction for a while, and I'd really considered that. However, it was at the same time I was getting into the meditative arts, I was getting into the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I was getting into the Eskrima, and my time was not as focused as it would have needed to be out there and be a competitive boxer. And so I just decided to follow the scholar's path, if you will, and that's kind of been my journey.
Okay. Out of your school, do you have students that compete?
Yes, we do. And in fact, my kids, they've been competing now for years. They both started up here when they were 4 years old.
Nice.
They compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's been really fun watching them evolve. And I've had numerous students through the years compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai and doing MMA. And so we definitely have that avenue here at the Academy.
Okay, that's cool. Earlier, you mentioned when you got involved in the meditation side, it really changed your life and really helped your martial arts. Talk about that a little bit. For maybe some people who have never. I mean, I've done very minor meditation. And my main school is traditional Taekwondo, and some of our techniques we do have meditation built into it. But I've never been one for like daily meditation. I've looked into it and stuff. But what are some benefits? If maybe someone's thinking about giving it a try? What do you think, in your opinion, how it can help their martial arts?
Well, so meditative and practices can help any athletics, whether it be the combative arts or you play basketball or you play football. You'll notice that a lot of professional high-level athletes will be practicing meditation to improve their game. And, one of the benefits that I like to talk about is the idea of yielding. And yielding, there's 3 different kinds of yielding. There's physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding we use in martial arts. It's the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But with yielding, instead of us seeing who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force, and now I can respond with less effort. It's obvious to see how this is beneficial in a contact sport or in a combative situation. In order to be good at yielding, though, it takes years and years to develop this skill. You need to be very well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. You have to be relaxed. The mind has to be calm and present. And all of these things take a while to cultivate. However, from day one, by incorporating an awareness practice through meditation, you start to see these things more clearly inside yourself. And when you start to see these things more clearly and become more in tune with this, now it can help our performance on any physical realm or any physical activity that we're doing. Once we start to expand our awareness inside ourselves, we also start to see things more clearly in others. And this can also be beneficial on a combative or an athletic standpoint. But it's also interesting because this is where we can move into what I call mental yielding, where we can use this in conversations. So say, for example, I said something and I noticed right away that it unsettled you, and I pick up on it from the beginning. It's a lot easier to adjust the conversation and point it in a positive direction than if I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head. And so learning how to use yielding in all of your interactions is a really powerful tool. One, you're just being more considerate, which is something we should all work on. But two, it allows you to be strategic in the outcomes of your interactions. And this is extremely important in relationships. It's good in business. It's good in sales. It's good in negotiations. I mean, there's so many different ways we can apply this idea of mental yielding. And then next we have emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but it's with your own interpersonal conflicts. So you think about oftentimes something will happen. Maybe you got hit in a fight, or you made a bad play on the field, or maybe even somebody said something to you and it threw you off your center. If it's easy to take that, whatever happened to you, and follow this negative path, and then you might go down a road that takes a minute, an hour, a week, or whatever, and all of these negative things kind of build up momentum. But with this kind of awareness training through meditation, if we could recognize that from the beginning and step back and say, maybe this is a better approach, a lot of times that improved awareness can save us a lot of heartache on the other side. And oftentimes I've been explaining the idea of yielding for years here at the Academy. And one of the most common things I hear people say when I start talking about this is, oh yeah, I understand. I use that all the time. And while I would agree, I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time. It's a lot deeper than that surface level that I think everybody uses.
Okay.
It's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, he would see things about that crime scene and the series of events and the timeline that I know at least I would have no clue of. And the meditative arts helps us see things inside ourselves and inside other people that I feel like you could never make those kinds of connections without having some kind of a meditative practice.
Okay.
And that's why, famous coaches like, Phil Jackson was having the Chicago Bulls when Michael Jordan played on them, all practice meditation and Tai Chi because it improved that awareness and enhanced those players' games. And, here you're talking about the best players in the world. And so you see it coming out more and more these days with performers, with athletes, with professionals. They're understanding that the benefits of this meditative practice are so valuable.
I even hear about, corporations that have someone literally on staff to help employees meditate. It's becoming more and more common, I think. So in your opinion, then, like if someone wants to get into it and wants to start doing some type of meditation to help them, what's the minimum commitment? Is this something they should devote a certain amount of time daily, a certain amount of time weekly to get the best benefit out of it?
So yes, that's a great question. And when you're starting a meditative practice, one of the most important things is being consistent. A meditative practice is meant to be more of a way of life and a lot less of a hobby that we do once in a while.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean you need to retire to a cave and spend the rest of your life meditating, but it is important to have a daily ritual practice. And in that ritual practice, it can be done in as little as 20 minutes. I mean, really, if that's a stretch for you, you could knock it down to 10 to just build the habit.
Okay.
But, the Dalai Lama once said, everybody should meditate for 20 minutes a day. Unless you're too busy, then you should meditate for an hour. And I love that saying, in that it is so important for everybody to just reconnect with themselves and kind of stay in tune with who we really are, which helps us in our martial arts. It helps us in life, our relationships, and in everything we do. And so that would be the first step, is having a consistent daily ritual practice. Then the next thing would be integrating some active practices into everything you do. These can be things like counting out 10 breaths or doing some spinal rotations or a simple movement exercise, something that you could do maybe when you're standing in line at the grocery store or walking down the street. There are things that we can integrate into our day to help bring our awareness back to our root, back to paying attention to how we really feel in that present moment. And the more that we integrate those, now when we go to our ritual practice the next day, we're getting to deeper and deeper levels of awareness through that training. And one of the most common things I hear people say when they're thinking about taking on a meditative practice is that, I tried it before and it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind. Meditation isn't about quieting your mind. It's about building that awareness and that ability to notice when you get distracted and taken off center, and using your breath, using your posture, using your movement to bring yourself back to center and have that focus. And that power to be able to do that under stressful environments can help us in so many different ways in life. And then lastly, there's the philosophical side of the training, which can be used either in active practices or ritual-based practices.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. And it looks like you have a lot of information about this on your website, theyieldingwarrior.com. People can read more about it and sign up for your program and order books and stuff too. So I'll definitely put a link for that out there when the episode comes out.
Yeah. Also, one more thing with that is I am offering a free copy of my book. So if anybody's interested, they could go to theyieldingwarrior.com/book and just pay for shipping and handling and get a free copy of it.
Oh, nice. That's a great deal. I will definitely mention that too. Talking about the books, first of all, what led to the first book? Were you interested in writing as a young person, or kind of what made you decide to write your first book and talk about the other books you've written?
As a young person, not at all.
Okay.
When I started doing the meditative arts, it brought out my creative side that I'd never had as a young guy. I started playing music. I started journaling and writing. I started following my dreams and logging my dreams and all of these things that help me to tap into that creativity. And so that was kind of what got me started. My last book was kind of written out of necessity in that it happened during the first COVID shutdown.
Okay.
And we didn't know how long this thing was going to last. My academy was closed. We couldn't open the doors. If people saw us in here, they'd complain to the city and, we'd get fined. Wow. And so there was all of this going on, and we didn't know if it was going to be 6 months, 5 years, or, nobody knew in the beginning. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I shifted immediately, and I was like, well, if I can't go in the academy, I'm going to write my next book. And my goal was to write 7,000 words a week for the next 10 weeks. And I knocked that book out, and then it took 3 years to edit it. And it finally was published in August last year. Oh, wow. And during that same first shutdown, I also created my online program, which is now the Yielding Warrior program.
Okay. Hopefully I'll make time to read it. And I don't know how many of my episodes you've listened to, but I'm one who before I started the podcast, I used to read a book a week. I loved reading. And once I started the podcast, it's definitely time consuming. I've read maybe 3 books in the last 2 years. So unfortunately, I miss reading. I love reading a lot, and I need to set time aside so I can start reading again.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Keep pushing your mind. It's a great habit to be in.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I agree. And especially when you're doing the podcast, I interview a lot of people who have written books. So that actually, it's like, okay, some of them send me copies. Some of them I order just because they're interesting. And I have a stack of probably easily 30 to 40 books from podcast guests. And I've maybe read 2 of them so far. So I need to find a way to step that up. And I used to donate plasma, and I'd always read when I was donating plasma. So that was at least 2 to 3 hours a week I could donate. I could read a book. But yeah, I need to get back into that practice because I do love reading. I mean, like I said, it was for about 10 straight years, it was a book a week. So I'm curious now, you've done numerous styles of martial arts. You've done boxing, you've done kickboxing, you've done the meditation side. What are your thoughts on something like MMA and the UFC? Is that something you're a fan of?
I really do think it's brought a lot of good awareness to the martial arts community. And I like that the athletes are getting more technical and there's a lot less kind of randomness to the sport like there was in the beginning, where there was kind of a lot of meatheads just going out there, big tough guys that really didn't practice as much. Now it's becoming a lot more professional, and there's some really technical guys out there. And so it's nice to see the sport evolving this way.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm one who has been watching it since the beginning. So it's part of me as a fan. I do miss, those first handful of UFCs when there was the, no rules type thing and it was style against style. But also I definitely see that it to survive, it had to change. It had to. If it was still like that, it would have been gone 20 some years ago, unfortunately. But I don't watch it as much as I used to. I actually used to judge MMA, so I used to go to so many local events and local fights and never missed a pay-per-view event. And right now I probably couldn't name a lot of the top fighters out there, but if it's on and I'm around, I will definitely watch it. It's enjoyable.
Yeah, these days, as far as the competition goes, I've really been getting into watching the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu worlds and the high-level Pan Ams and those competitions, because I've really I just love the art of jiu-jitsu. It's really pretty amazing.
Definitely
amazing martial art. And
you mentioned your kids practice. Now what about your spouse?
That's actually how I met my wife.
Really?
She came up here for her fellowship, and the first day that she was in Portland, she came in and signed up at my academy. And I never once asked a student out. She was here for a couple months, and she called me up one night, and as soon as I picked up the phone, she hung up. I hit redial. I called her back. I'm like, "Hey, is everything okay?" And she's kind of stuttering a little bit. I was wondering if you wanted to go hang out. And so that's kind of how that all started.
Well, that's good. Now, does she still train?
No, she's has a pretty demanding job.
Mm-hmm.
As you can imagine, being a surgeon, she's pretty full, and she finds time to run, and that's kind of her thing right now.
Okay, that's cool. And you said both of the kids. Now, how old are the kids?
My son turned 16 today, and my daughter's 14.
Okay.
Yeah, and they both compete. My daughter is a terror. She's an assassin on the mat. It's fun to watch her play, and they're both. My daughter's going into her freshman year next year, and she's going to start wrestling as well.
Oh, cool.
And my son's a wrestler, and he does the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu also.
Okay. That's always intrigued me, because I know they're similar with, wrestling and BJJ, but there's a lot of differences. Is that something that either of them, like your son, if he's already done it, does he worry about remembering what he can and can't do if he's wrestling versus BJJ? Or is that pretty easy to keep track of?
I think it's pretty easy to keep track of. They're repping all the time. They've getting the mindset of what their job is to do, and it's pretty easy to stay focused.
Okay. I have a friend whose daughter wrestles, and she asked me if I thought BJJ would be beneficial, and that's I personally don't know, but I'll ask some other people who maybe have a better idea than I do. So I would think definitely parts of it would be beneficial to help wrestling.
Yes, for sure. And it's also, I find that a lot of wrestlers really enjoy the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because it just opens up their eyes to a lot of other possibilities that, you just don't see in collegiate style wrestling.
Nice. Yeah, I will definitely tell her to maybe check it out then. So I'm curious, in all your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy that is at the top of your list?
Not so much. I read and study a lot of different things. There was a period of time in my training where one of my meditation teachers had me memorize the Tao Te Ching. If you're familiar with that, it's a book of 81 sayings. And I used to go through those in my head every day for about a 10 to 12 year stint. And I really did learn a lot from that, and I think if you haven't read it, is definitely a valuable book to look at.
Cool. Yeah, I've heard of it. I've never read it. It's one of the ones that's on my list, so I'll probably order it.
Did you know that the Tao Te Ching is only second to the Bible in the highest published book in the world?
Really? No, I did not know that. Okay.
Yes.
That's actually kind of interesting. I know you said you didn't really compete a lot, but you trained a lot over the years. So worst martial arts related injury?
I've had many. I've had shoulder surgery, hip surgery, knee surgery. So I've been through a few hurdles there.
Okay. Wow. Nice. See, and me, my worst actual martial arts related one is a broken toe and a fractured knuckle. I've been very lucky, a few sprained ankles and stuff, but I've been lucky to never actually been injured badly for martial arts. So knock on wood a little bit. All right, so we talked a little bit about MMA. Kind of some fun questions I hear that I use towards the end of the interview. So I'm curious, if you were to decide suddenly that you were going to go and join MMA and step into the octagon, what would your walk-up music be?
I don't know. Something a little offbeat, maybe. I'm kind of a hillbilly rock kind of guy, so
okay,
maybe something from the South somewhere,
like a CCR type thing, or
yeah, more like something with a funky rhythm, but maybe a little banjo twang in the background.
Okay, like Man of Constant Sorrow type thing, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
That could be fun. I'd never heard that before. All right. Who are 3, 4, 5 names that you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Master Sam Tam.
Okay.
Guru Danan Asano.
Nice.
Hickson Gracie.
Nice.
And Ponoguru Edgar Saletti.
Okay. Now, have you got to train with Danan Asano?
Yes, I have. I met him for the first time back in about 1990, 91.
Okay.
And I've been to his academy multiple times down in LA, and he's come up here to do seminars probably 20, 30 times through the years, and I've been to all of his seminars when he comes up.
Yeah, he was just in Minnesota like a week ago, and I could not make it to his seminar. I was very, very bummed that I couldn't make it. I've never met him. I've actually interviewed Diana, his daughter, on the show, and Ron, his son-in-law, have both been on the show, but I've never actually met Dan. The one time I stopped at a school when I was in California visiting friends, and he wasn't there that day, so missed out.
He is literally like an encyclopedia of martial arts. Guru Dan is an amazing person.
I've heard that from so many people. I've heard nothing but amazing things about him, and people who trained with him just can't stop talking and praising him. So that's very cool. All right, how about a favorite martial arts book?
It's more on the meditative side of things, but The Root of Chinese Qigong by Dr. Yong Jingming.
Okay. Now, is that one that you think would be beneficial to people who don't study that art?
Well, again, yeah, it's kind of going into the meditative arts. And so I think anybody, whether they're doing jiu-jitsu or taekwondo or boxing or whatever it is, I think could benefit by integrating the meditative arts into their life.
Cool. Yeah, I will add that one to my list too. All right. How about a favorite martial arts video game? Did you ever get into gaming?
I couldn't help you out with that one.
Okay, no worries. All right. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Been a long time since I watched a lot of TV, but I remember as a kid always really liking that old TV show called Kung Fu with David Carradine.
Okay. That one gets picked a lot. That's probably the number one or number two for most picked when I ask that question. A lot of random ones and stuff, but that one is definitely up there in the top of the list. All right. How about favorite martial arts movie?
I like Jackie Chan. I like his sense of humor and his athletic ability and him doing all of his stunts. So probably one of his movies. Yeah,
I'm a big Jackie Chan fan. I think Rumble in the Bronx is one of my favorite, but I love Drunken Master. And we were actually literally at work today. Someone brought up Jackie Chan, and that led to like an hour-long conversation about Jackie Chan at work. So he's always fun to watch. Now he's fun to talk about. All right. How about now? This one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. Any movie you've ever seen, a favorite movie fight scene?
I think it would be On Bak.
Nice. Great movie. Tony Jaa, that's one person I'd love to interview. I'd love to get him on the show and chat with him about making that movie. So much fun to watch. All right. One thing I have to ask you, I mentioned in your intro that as a kid, you were really into BMX, and this has nothing to do with martial arts, but were you a fan of the movie Rad as a kid?
I think I saw that, but it's been so long, I vaguely remember it.
Okay. I actually just, it was, 4 months. It was the 35th anniversary, and they brought it back into theaters. So I own the DVD anyway, but I got to go watch it again. So I never rode BMX as a kid, but I loved that movie. I grew up in Minnesota, so there wasn't much to do other than watch movies. It gets really cold here. So before I let you go, anything that we didn't cover that I forgot to ask you that you want to be sure we get out there that the listeners know? And like I said, I'll put links for definitely your school website for Northwest Fighting. I will put a link out there for your website where the Yielding Warrior and anything else you need me to. But anything that we want to be sure to mention before we wrap this up?
No, I think we're good. And thank you very much for having me on. It's been an honor.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad you reached out. Very interesting. And I'm definitely going to be ordering a few of your books. And I love the way you're doing it. And I'm hoping to, I've actually never been up to that part of the country. So I'm hoping to get up there and on a vacation sometime. And it'd be cool to pop in and check out your school and meet you in person. But it's continued success in what you're doing. And I can't wait till the episode comes out.
Anytime. You're always welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.